you're like me, you try to keep up with what's going on in our government. So when I began to hear about the sequestration, I wanted to do more research and find out what it was all about. I found an article in the Washington Post by Dylan Matthews that was a blog article which was the most frequently asked questions about the sequestration. The sequestration is a group of cuts to federal spending that took effect March 1st, 2013 as part of the Budget Control Act of 2011, better known as the Debt Ceiling Compromise. The recent budget sequestration is going to affect us all as Americans in either a direct or indirect manner, and could have been avoided if our elected officials could have come to an agreement concerning debt reduction, but as it is now, the sequestration was only delayed and not avoided. The Joint Committee on Deficit Reduction in Congress tried but were unsuccessful in passing a deal to cut $1.5 trillion over 10 years by December 23, 2011. A deal was reached to avoid the impending fiscal cliff, but this only led to the delay of the sequester until March 1, 2013, instead of it beginning on New Year's, according to Dylan Matthews' blog article. The sequestration is divided evenly between defense programs and domestic programs. The defense half of the cuts affect such things as weapons purchase, base operations, construction work, and other discretionary spending. Domestic program cuts include both mandatory, meaning making regular payouts like Social Security and Medicaid, and discretionary domestic spending. According to the Washington Post frequently asked questions blog I consulted, an estimated breakdown of the cuts includes $42.7 billion in defense cuts, $28.7 billion in domestic discretionary cuts, $9.9 billion in Medicare cuts, and $4 billion in other mandatory cuts, for a total of $85.4 billion in cuts for 2013. More cuts are scheduled for the years 2014 through 2021 at a total of approximately $109 billion per year. No programs will actually end due to the sequestration, but the size and scale of several existing programs will be reduced instead of an actual end to the program. There is a long list of programs receiving cuts, but in my research I have found that the military and healthcare will suffer the biggest hits. While military pay will not be affected, benefits such as tuition reimbursement and assistance and TRICARE, which is the military and military family insurance provider, are subject to cuts under the sequester. The hits to Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE will affect healthcare in ways that we cannot begin to fathom, such as a provider shortage that will accept the lower reimbursements for these insurance cuts. Federal employees will not technically be subject to cuts, but in the long run they will be affected due to the sequestration causing furloughs, which amount to unpaid time off, and therefore a pay cut. Job losses will be both direct and indirect, with an estimate of 2.14 million jobs lost across the boards. An example of this is the national park system, due to furloughs and a decrease in summer hiring, which will also lead to less availability of the parks to the public. There are also proposed cuts to the unemployment payouts on a federal but not state level by as much as 11%. Dylan Matthews' blog article in the Washington Post explains how the President and the Congress wants to handle the sequester and how that varies. The President has suggested that in place of the sequester, he would like a package deal of tax increases and spending cuts. Democrats in Congress have proposed a deal with a mix of tax increases and spending cuts as well, but notably includes a reduction in farm subsidy payments to farmers and an increase in flood insurance premiums. The Republicans' plan proposes no tax increases, no defense cuts, but considerable domestic spending reductions, including cuts to food stamps, the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and Dodd-Frank. The federal budget sequestration is a band-aid of sorts to an even larger and growing problem by both our government and even some of us personally, in that spending needs to be curbed and savings promoted. The effects of the sequestration will trickle down and affect every one of us at some point, and will have a lasting effect for years to come on our country as a whole. Cuts to military and health care will be detrimental to the very foundations on which our country was built. But I, and possibly all of you, agree that we need some sort of solution. Before researching the sequestration for this speech, I personally had a great deal of confusion concerning this plan of budget cuts for our country. But I now have a better understanding, and I hope that I have helped you get a greater understanding as well. Thank you.